Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I'm Coleman Hodges coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. We are joined, as always, by SwimSwam Editor-in-Chief Braden Keith from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Robert Gibbs from the Quad Cities in Iowa. What's up, guys? How was your weekend of college swimming?
How's the corn hanging in Iowa?
The corn is cut right now. Oh. New batch coming before too long, I'm sure.
You said that way too fluidly, and that concerns me. You're turning into an Iowa boy.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, there's only so much to do around here. So
I just watched Children of the Corn 2, and so I'm very sensitive to that. And I'd rather we change the subject.
Let's talk about swimming.
Let's talk about swimming. Let's start with the SEC championships. Tennessee gets their crown back after getting it taken by Kentucky last year. Tennessee women always look great at conference. They always swim kind of out of their minds. But my question is, can they hold it through to NCAAs, especially with Alabama looking like the more prepared NCAA team?
Yeah, it's all relative, right? And in the most recent data, Tennessee didn't do terrible at NCAAs last year. They've certainly done worse at holding their taper. So I think they can hold it, but they're kind of on the outside of that top group looking in from an NCAA perspective. Ellen Walsh is very good. She won a crazy triple, but she's not going to win that triple at NCAA. So to me, they were always kind of the sixth team. And so if they don't do well, they're going from sixth to seventh. I think when they think they have a chance at a top three finish, they'll change their approach. But for now, I think they value an SEC title more than they value sort of one spot higher at NCAAs. So I think they'll do okay. They showed they're starting to figure it out a little bit last year, but I don't think they're in that group with Texas and NC State.
They look great at SECs. Would love to see them continue and do something amazing at NCAAs and kind of crack that top five against what we think is going to, what we expect to see for that top five, because it'd be a fun surprise. But realistically, just Virginia, Stanford, Cal, NC State, Texas, that's a tough group to crack. And even with Tennessee's, what they did at SECs, they'd have to, I think, probably improve even more to crack that top five. So
do you think they can beat Alabama at NCAAs?
That's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah, I don't know. Alabama looked good at the midseason invite. They threw down lots of fast times. They looked good again here. And
their relays are just sensational. They did not miss a beat, even though, they brought in fresh blood and they just got better from last year.
So here's the simulator numbers. This is no diving, and Pac-12 hasn't swum yet. So take Stanford with a grain of salt. Simulator shows Virginia at 498, NC State at 335, Tennessee at 301.5, and Alabama at 272.5. So if Tennessee wants to beat Alabama at NCAAs, again, we're assuming Alabama is going to be able to hold on to their taper with a head coach who's never done this taper before as a coach. But if Alabama holds on to what they're doing, Tennessee doesn't have a big margin for error. That's 29 points. So tough. I would lean towards Alabama, but I'm kind of surprised that Tennessee is still ahead of them in the simulator with those relays.
The Tennessee also has diving, right? I mean, traditionally they will score in diving, whereas Bama maybe not as much.
I don't think Tennessee women have much diving this year. I should have looked this up already, but I'm pretty sure
Brown and our diving expert.
It's fun. Just looking real quick.
Alabama's platform diver won the SEC title, didn't she? With their fourth head coach in 5 years. Like, you think the Alabama swim coach situation is crazy. Alabama diving is using a graduate assistant, and they still had a conference champion on platform.
That's going to be a close battle. Definitely one to watch at NCAAs. Definitely an exciting one. Moving on to the men, Florida was missing two of their top dudes, namely their double Olympic champion, and still just creamed everyone, especially in his event, the mile, 7 out of the top 9 spots. I mean, this is like, hats off to Nesty and Co, because this is just kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, they got a lot of dudes on that team. They were missing 2 dudes, and it still wasn't even close. That was probably the craziest like Power 5 conference performance I've ever seen from them or anybody. Just the way that they were able to dominate the mile without Robert Fink, win all 5 relays without Dylan Hillis as a breaststroker on the 4 medley. Presuming that their COVID cases aren't too severe and they're able to get back in the water pretty quick, like Florida looks really good. And what I think is really interesting about them is they're finally getting an identity. It really feels like we now know what Florida is. Florida is a distance group where everybody's going to finish their races really well. And then they're going to have a lot of guys that you don't think about in the sprints. I think when teams start to get identities like that, that's when you start to turn a corner. And obviously you've got to be good at everything to win an NCAA title, but I think you have to kind of start with an identity. And I think NC State men have done that too. Nesty has all the momentum. And I think this next recruiting class is going to be massive for Florida. And I think by 2025, 2026, they're going to be up there with Texas and Cal. I think it's going to be a real 4-team battle for NCAAs, which we haven't seen in a long time.
Speaking of recruiting, I think one thing that really stood out to me for the Gators, the men's SEC, was contributions from freshmen who weren't necessarily top 5 or top 10 recruits. McGuire, McDuff, split.
It's a great name.
It is, first of all, 1869, anchoring their 2 free relay as a freshman.
Yeah.
42 mid on the 100 free. Guys going 130, again, freshmen going 132 Oscar Lindholm on the 800 free relay. So it wasn't just, again, the top guys delivering. It was a whole team battle. And they got maybe 14 or 15 NCAA qualifiers potentially already. Maybe a few more in there once the cut lines show up to see what they're actually at.
It seems like more and more teams are going to be bumping against that 18 swimmer cap this year. I'm going to see interesting to see how that turns out and who's going to suffer. I mean, there's going to be certain teams that aren't going to get nearly as many qualifiers as they usually do, I think.
This team battle felt kind of like Big 12s, right? It was like, it was like not that much of a battle. And Georgia has like a strong team, and I think they'll do well at NCAAs also, but seems like some of the other schools team wise maybe had like a dip year. They might have studs, but they just don't have the depth of Florida. What a week for freshmen though, especially Jordan Crooks, fastest freshman of all time now. Do we think that he can carry that to NCAAs and maybe drop a few hundreds?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. We don't have a lot of information to go off of because he's had such a huge breakout season. I tend to be pessimistic about these things and think that they're not going to quite hold it. I'm thinking about other examples like Bo Becker when he had his first big breakout at Big Tens. So I think he'll be good. I don't know if he's going to hold 18.5, but I think he'll be an 18 for sure.
I'm pretty excited to watch that one. So I think we're good on SECs. Let's switch to ACCs. Virginia women did their thing. 3 NCAA records in relays. They won like every title on day 2. I think they like swept the individual events, swept the relays. Just an all around best performance you could really hope for. NC State women, Braden, you were saying this earlier, kind of built for that conference meet, but they made it close. I mean, we wrote an article on the last day that like, can NC State catch UVA? And like, it wasn't likely, but it could have happened, right?
Right. And that was after last week on the podcast, we just blew through it saying it's fine, Virginia's going to win. I think Virginia knew it was going to be close. I think just talking to people around that program, they had a sense of the way NC State was built and that NC State is built for conference meets just because of their depth. And it's not that they don't have stars like Catherine Burkhoff, who's going to score a lot of points at NCAAs, but they aren't going to beat Virginia at NCAAs. And I don't think it'll be that close, but they could have beat Virginia at ACCs. And they had about a perfect meet. But again, they had a perfect meet, great conference team, and Virginia still won by 70 points. It wound up not being super close. And like after this meet, it's NCAAs feels like a runaway. I know Stanford's got all that talent and we're still waiting to see what they do at the conference meet, but like Alex Walsh is going 2:03.0 in the 200 breaststroke, and she's not going to swim it at NCAAs. That's just like, I don't know how to process that. And people are asking, oh, what's she going to do in long course? I don't even want to answer that question until I see what she does in the 200 fly, because I feel like we're going to sell out on, oh, she should do the 200 breast. She should do the 200 breast. And then she's going to pop off a 149 in the 200 fly. And we're all going to say, oh, she should do the 200 fly, 200 fly, 200 fly.
And then she'll do the 200 back.
Yeah. It's hard to process how good they are. They're one of those teams that, like, it's just like over and over again. They're just dominated races. I mean, there were so many races that they dominated, and they have such good swimmers.
I love UVA's not only top end talent, but the versatility of swimmers like Walsh and Douglas. I did some quick math this morning. If you tally up Alex Walsh's best 100 back and best 100 breast, which are both 3 or 4 years old at this point, and her 49.6 fly, you get a 400 medley relay of Alex Walsh of 3:24.9. Would be one of the top few in history. And that's with 2 old times in there, or with maybe I subtracted half a second for a relay split, but still, like a relay of 4 Alex Walshes would be one of the top, 400 medley relays in history.
I mean, she's got to be a 49-second backstroker, right? And she's got to be a 57-second breaststroker.
I mean, she went 50.8 in 2018 on the 100 back.
Yeah.
So, and we've already seen some commenters discuss, who's more versatile, is it Walsh or Douglas? And
that's what's wild.
Like, what a question to be able to ask if both those swimmers on one team.
It's almost like Douglas disappeared at this meet, and I know she didn't, but Alex Walsh was so good that, like, there was not that much conversation about Kate Douglas, and Gretchen Walsh was so good for that matter. And I know part of that's just because Kate is Kate, and we already know how good she is, and she didn't really go best times or a lot of best times. But, like, again, if you can do something at an ACC championship meets that makes people stop talking about Kate Douglas, you've really done something crazy.
Okay, so what I'm wondering for NCAAs is last year, UVA broke the 2 medley American NCAA record at ACCs, and then NC State won the title, right? I mean, could that happen again this year? And obviously, NCAAs, anything's possible. It's a different meet, yada, yada. But it's like, we didn't see that coming last year, right? That was a complete surprise. Could it happen again?
I feel, the difference is that it's on the first day this year. So everybody's swimming a little fresher. On the other hand, you don't know where everybody's at. But that changes the calculus for NC State too, right? Like, they had great medley relays at NCAAs last year, but they found Julia Poole to anchor the 400 medley relay by knowing she was swimming well. I don't know. I feel like with Gretchen on the roster this year, it's like their talent is so overwhelming that I can't guarantee that they're going to swim faster at NCAAs, but I have to believe they're going to win still.
I mean, NC State almost broke almost broke the old 400 medley relay record, NCAA record, and lost by 2 seconds. I mean, it just wasn't even fair, right? So, something to keep an eye on, but yeah, it doesn't seem. So do we think NC State can hold off Stanford and defend their second place finish from last year? That's the real question.
It's such a tough question because we know how much talent Stanford has, and they haven't really shown us what they're capable of yet. And we don't know. And after Olympic trials, I'm sorry, we have to say this. We don't know if that's because they've shown us what they have, and that's what they have, or if they're just saving it all for next week. So by the next time we see each other, we'll know, or we'll at least have a better idea. But NC State looked really good to me. We're still waiting to see the Texas women too. Don't forget about them. I think they're better than they don't have a lot of flash to them, a lot of big names on their roster this year, but I think the Texas women are in that battle too, based on depth. If I had to call it right now, I think I'd still stick with the Stanford talent. I just still think, Reagan Smith is a 50-point scorer. I just still would stick with the Stanford talent. But NC State has made me think a lot harder about that than I would have a week ago.
Robert, what's your crystal ball say?
Again, I agree. We'll have to see how Pac-12's goes for sure. Stanford's just has so much talent on that roster. You think they should be able to get up there, but we've seen NC State deliver time and time again over the last few years, and I would not count them out by any stretch of the imagination.
I miss Loretta. She disagrees with me on everything. Robert just agrees. Because I'm right on everything, but like Loretta still disagrees with me, and I like that.
I wonder if Burkhoff swims the 200 back, the 100 free at NCAAs. Like, she's an amazing 200 backstroker.
That's a dirty double.
I would bet not, because she had a very good 100 freestyle, and that's going to put her on the relays for them. But she's not title contender in the 100 free. It's going to take 47 low to win the 100 free.
She went 46 high.
Wait, what? 47 low?
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say.
46 low to mid.
I mean, she's a few hundreds behind Douglas, so.
I don't know. I'm thinking 45 high.
But
Maggie McNeil?
Maggie? Yeah, I mean,
McNeil. Yeah, there's plenty of others out there.
She didn't even rest.
200 back is stacked too, though.
It is, but I think she's in the conversation for a title in the 200 back. I don't think she's really in the conversation for the title in the 100 free.
Yeah, I mean, she's the defending NCAA champ in the 100. She held Gretchen off for the ACC title, which I was shocked at. I don't feel like Gretchen had a great swim, which she proved because she let off the relay like a second faster. Yeah, so it's like, okay, but like, you know, Burkhoff still had a great swim, and it seems like she can definitely carry that momentum into the 200 better than the 100 free. Okay, speaking of something else that Braden was right about, Ohio State women still
love speaking about things that I'm right about.
Still getting it done 3 times in a row now that the SwimSwam staff has been, most of them at least, have been like, oh, we think Michigan can do it.
The official pick.
And
I recognize I have the prerogative to change at any time, but I try not to do that unless I have to. I think Michigan was a reasonable pick. Like, I don't think Michigan was an unreasonable pick. But after 2 straight years of it, I did think Ohio State was going to win, as you saw on last week's SwimSwam Breakdown. You know, it definitely closed the gap. We saw where the new roster limits impacted Ohio State more than anybody else. Swim of the meat for Ohio State has got to be Nia Funderburk. Bill Dorencott is taking a little bit of heat for not putting her on the scoring roster. Oh, you should have recognized in practice that she was ready to go. She was like a 56 in the 100 back midseason. Like, I don't think he made the wrong call at all, even though it was proven to be not the maximal scoring roster. You know, she went a 51.6, which is a great time for her, but like, there was no race or meet indication that she had that in her. We don't know what they saw in practice. She did get to come, which still means something. So he wasn't like, oh, you know, if he thought she was going to go another 56, she wouldn't have made the 24 swimmer roster. She wouldn't have made the travel roster. So he knew she was going to be better than that. But I think it's cool that she still made NCAAs. I think that's a big swim for somebody out of an exhibition prelims race. And I love that it's still NCAA eligible. To me, that says that the Big Ten's roster contraction, they did it the right way. You know, like teams like Ohio State can still bring extra swimmers for official swims. They just don't count towards scoring. And I know it's important to those coaches that they give the teams at the bottom of the conference a chance to put swimmers in finals, because we've seen that conference under assault by cuts in the last few years, Iowa and Michigan State, and rumors of other programs. So like, I think it's important. We see this in college athletics as kind of rebalancing. You know, college football teams, the top 4 teams in the country used to be able to take high school All-Americans and bury them on the bench just to keep other teams from having them with full scholarships. So that's why scholarship limits are there, and roster limits are another way to do it. And I think it's good for the health of the sport, even though it creates sort of some pain points in the short term where you have swimmers that could be on scoring rosters left on the bench.
Robert, what do you think of Ohio State? How did they get this done?
You know, they just kind of do it quietly every year. There's really no one name you can point to. Usually you go, oh yeah, that's an Ohio State swimmer, where you think of the big stars throughout the rest of the NCAA. But they just show up and get the job done. And just going back to, you know, our picks, And I didn't do the pick for that, but I know it takes a couple of years before we really start believing in a certain team sometimes. And I find for myself, once you kind of flip the switch on a team, that's when they start disappointing you. So next year we might pick Ohio State to win and they may not. So you just never really know. And that's why it's fun to try. But again, just talented roster, top to bottom, relays were there. And without even really coming, the person we talked about wasn't even someone on the scoring roster. So it just shows you they're doing a great job developing swimmers from top to bottom over there.
Coming off of the Big Ten women, totally forgot about the ACC men. That NC State freshman class really showed up. I mean, I feel like they met expectations. False? True?
No, totally true. What was the stat that you threw out, Robert? David Curtis was NC State's lowest scoring individual swimmer.
Pretty sure that's correct. Yeah.
Of those that scored, which is partially because he's kind of a 50-100 free guy, doesn't have a great third event. But, even he was otherworldly. If it wasn't for Jordan Crooks, it'd be David Curtis that was the freshman of the week. What I thought was interesting, NC State freshmen showed up for sure, but they didn't score that many more points than some of the other freshman classes. So they scored 226 with 4 scoring swimmers. Louisville scored 191 with 5 scoring swimmers. Virginia scored 222.5 with 6 scoring swimmers. So, NC State did a lot with fewer swimmers, but there were other classes in this conference that did well. And I think that's maybe why the SEC doesn't have the depth that it's had in the past. I think there's a big shift to the ACC. And I think that's kind of an explanation for what we saw at both of those meets where the ACC men seemed super, super fast. And the SEC men, after Florida and a few other examples, seemed like maybe they lacked some depth.
NC State freshmen only had 4 scorers.
4 individual scorers. That's
wild.
I think, and I think next year they'll have, it's not that wild because part of it is that they just have such a good team that, freshmen might not crack the roster yet, but they've got another big class next year. Next year is like the real big class. So between those two classes, but again, we roll those classes forward. If those classes are each scoring 400 points at ACCs when they're juniors and seniors, then that's when we're talking about a team that can contend for the NCAA title.
Yeah, top to bottom, ACC men particularly just great this week. You look at the relay times compared, right up there with SEC, in some cases better. And it was just fun watching freshmen particularly explode, like we're saying. One of the questions we've had for NC State the last few years is, can they actually develop the top end recruits that kind of made their money early on, finding the diamond in the rough types, right? Your Justin Rest or someone like that who wasn't necessarily highly touted coming in. But what can they do with your David Curtis's, your Sam Hoovers, your Aiden Hayes, who set national age group record in the 200 fly this week, which kind of got overshadowed, in the wake of everything else. So NC State seems to be delivering with the freshman class. UVA is too, set an American record in the 200 free relay with, I think, 2 freshmen on there, 1 freshman.
That was the shock of the meet.
But they left off 19-1 freshman too, in Jack Aiken.
Yeah.
So, 3 underclassmen on an American relay record, and NC State was right behind them. We could see that U.S. Open record go down before too long, which is just crazy to think about.
It's been 13 long years.
But again, top to bottom, ACC men, really fun week. Largely buoyed by underclassmen, not just freshmen, but sophomores too. Yusuf Ramadan, Carlos Comarti at Virginia Tech.
So here's an interesting slope. Virginia men by class. Remember, they didn't have any 5th years come back. So freshmen, 222.5 points. Sophomores, 220 points. Juniors, 171.5 points. Seniors, which I believe is a class that DeSorbo didn't recruit, at least not the full class, 90 points. So their curve is like this with the freshmen up at the top, which, right now it's NC State men, Louisville men, the Virginia men aren't there yet, but they're clearly trending in the right direction. And I think another year or two and they'll be up there.
That is an interesting slope for sure. And it seems like obviously the UVA women have just gone way up with under DeSorbo, and it seems like the men are getting there as well. It's taking a little more time. So let's move on from college swimming. A little bit of international news. ISL athletes Shields, Hozu, and Michael Andrew lost the bid for class status in their lawsuit against FINA. Braden, can you break this one down a little bit and give us the X's and O's and what this implies?
So it was kind of a split decision. They are allowed to act as a class in terms of trying to stop FINA from doing this, from trying to stop FINA from interfering with the ISL, which is all well and good. And on a surface level, well, isn't that the whole goal of this lawsuit? But we know in reality, that's not the whole goal of this lawsuit. It's kind of a secondary goal of this lawsuit. And the first goal is to hurt FINA financially, to win a big landfall. And the damages part of the lawsuit is where the courts found that they could not act as a class. And basically what they said is, because of the way the ISL is structured, because of the way the money is distributed by the ISL, all athletes don't stand to benefit the same way or have the same opportunity to benefit if they win this lawsuit. So in other words, some athletes like Michael Andrew and Katinka Hozu, who own teams, or other athletes like Sarah Sjöström, who's not a party to the lawsuit, who win lots of ISL money, stand to benefit in a different way than swimmers at the bottom of the league, like a Townley Haas, or, you know, somebody who's not taking in the big money, because they're all competing for the same prize pool. And so when one swimmer wins, another swimmer loses out. So the courts made this distinction between what's happening here and what's happening in the NCAA, where effectively the athletes were suing to say, we all have unlimited, or not unlimited, but unfettered ability to go out into the marketplace and find sponsors. So when if the athletes win that lawsuit in the NCAA, everybody benefits in the same direction, in the same way. This is super important because, again, the ISL is not the plaintiff in this lawsuit. They have a separate lawsuit that they're the plaintiff in, but they are funding. Konstantin Grigorishin, the founder of the ISL, is funding this lawsuit. It's his lawyers. This is a surrogate lawsuit for Konstantin Grigorishin. And so from his perspective now, he loses a lot of leverage in settlement negotiations, which is a whole different matter, because that's where FINA got themselves in trouble by disclosing settlement negotiations that they weren't supposed to. You know, the cost benefit has changed dramatically, because this is an expensive lawsuit. They will spend, I assume, at least $1 million on this lawsuit by the time it's done. And now they only have basically 3 athletes that can win financial damages from the ISL. So that makes it hard to see how this will be a net positive unless they get some awarding of costs to the league. But it limits the damage they can do to FINA, which, you know, from the perspective of the rest of us, right, can be a good thing. FINA has its problems, but the governing body giving $50 million to the ISL isn't good for the sport as it exists right now. That can create a lot of problems in terms of world championships and Olympic hosting and funding of scholarship programs around the world and all those kind of things. So, you know, I think the best outcome for the industry at this point is FINA gets hit a little bit financially. FINA is told they have to stop interfering with the ISL directly. And then everybody moves on. And from that point, we really need the ISL and FINA to get on the same page, to work together, to figure out how to make this all work. What's more interesting than this, I thought, was finding out that Michael Andrew owns 40%. Michael Andrew and his family own 40% of the New York Breakers, who still haven't taken down their anti-vax tweets, even though it seems like the league is trying to make that happen. And if they still own 40% of the team, that's probably why the league is having a hard time getting them to delete those tweets. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Do we see a world where FINA and ISL can ever get along, or make both things coexist for the benefit of the athletes in the swimming community?
You know, I do. I think this is what people do in business. They posture, but ultimately these are business people, right? Like, I don't know. I think some of them probably take it personally, but ultimately they will make the best business decision. And I think if ISL survives that long, the best business decision has to be them working together, and they have to push and have some friction to come to the best results. But like what's happening this year isn't sustainable. It's not going to be good for either side. And so it's going to be, can the ISL taper back its ambitions a little bit? And if the ISL does that, is FINA willing to give a little bit on scheduling? That'll be the big question. FINA could kill the World Cup meets. I mean, that could be the negotiation. My guess is that what will ultimately have to happen is somebody will have to pay somebody else. ISL will have to contribute funding to FINA in order to get FINA to drop the World Cups, for example. Or FINA will have to pay ISL to adjust its schedule, depending on who, when it gets to that point, who has the most leverage with the athletes. We saw the Dutch Federation has basically said, sorry, our athletes can't do ISL this year. We're spending millions of dollars on their training and salaries and stuff too. And if they want to continue to receive the benefits of those millions of dollars, the ISL doesn't fit into the schedule this year. So it's all about leverage, right? That's how this all works.
One thing I have to add is, as you're talking about, can FINA and ISL get along? The only thing that popped in my head was the scene from Rocky IV at the end of the movie, where it's like, if I can change and you can change, everybody can change. And I just had this pipe dream that could happen, but I don't know it's going to. But maybe if we sit them down and everyone watch Rocky IV together, maybe that'll change something.
The problem continues to be that ISL has to find $30+ million a year of revenue to break even on this. And that's going to be hard for them. If FINA has that kind of revenue, but they have that kind of revenue because national governments essentially are contributing that kind of revenue. And it's going to be harder for the ISL to tap into that money, especially with Constantine's sort of standing in the world. That's going to be tough. I think FINA right now has the upper hand. But again, they've got to meet in the middle somewhere. They can't both just stand at their end of the rope and keep pulling.
So obviously this is an ongoing story. We've seen this conflict basically happen since the ISL was born 5 years ago now, or at least the concept of it was. But we'll see how it plays out moving forward. And on that note, it's time to play our favorite game at the SwimSwam Breakdown. Let's play Sink or Swim. Cal Stanford men's dual meet. I think it was the fastest dual meet in history. Everyone suited up. We saw some spicy times. This could have been a conference meet on its own. So my question to you is this: can the Stanford men crack top 6 at NCAAs?
I am going to sink that. I'm trying not to overreact to dual meet times. I think that, they were good, very good dual meet times. It's a COVID year still. These are two teams that are historically pretty conservative with their plans in terms of going towards NCAAs. I think both teams are trying to make sure they have some security going into Pac-12s in case there are COVID issues. And I just think there's too many other good teams. I don't think Stanford is better than Georgia at an NCAA level. I don't think Stanford is better than Florida at an NCAA level. I think they maybe are on par with Virginia Tech at an NCAA level. I don't see top 6. I think closer to 10th.
Okay. They went 249 at a dual meet in the 400 free relay. That's what really stood out to me. It's like they had obviously some standout swims. The freshman butterfly 45 low in the 100, and he won the 200 as well, 141. But it's like you have 249 in a dual meet. Like they've at least got 4 guys who are firing, right? And obviously one of those being Russian freshman Andrei Minikov. Sorry, Robert, sink or swim, top 6.
I'm going to sink that as well. Again, hate to keep agreeing with Braden, but it's just kind of at this point, I just don't see it. Not just the teams that Braden mentioned, but Indiana, Louisville, I think still really strong as well. And we've seen California teams go, fast. in season times before. And I know it's a little bit different, but last year, Reese Whitley went 148 and 200 breast, I think in November or December. And I don't think he matched at NCAAs. So could Stanford improve? Sure. Or will they continue to improve? Yes. Are they going to necessarily, crush the times they just did the other day at NCAAs? I don't know. Not enough with everyone else that's swimming really fast right now for me to say, that's a swim for sure.
And that's the problem. What they did the other day was super fast, but they've still got to be faster to be top 6 at NCAAs, I think. Because they don't have that depth of score like a Cal or a Texas.
Surrounded by realists. You guys are lame. All right, moving on. Alex Walsh, we mentioned it earlier, 2:03.0 in the 200 breast. We know she's not swimming it at NCAAs. But my question is, can we see Lilly King's NCAA record of 2:02.60 go down at NCAAs?
I'm going to swim it. I think Kate Douglas races it. I think now that Alex went a 2:03.0, Kate wants to go a 2:02, and I think she's going to get it. I think she's going to get it, even if she doesn't have a perfect meet.
All right, I'll disagree. I'm going to go sink on this one, just to be contrary on this one, only because I think, again, UV has so much breaststroke depth. I'm not sure it makes sense for Douglas to swim it. They're going for points. So I'm leaning towards her swimming the 100 free. Could be horribly wrong. I'm not entirely sure I believe it as I say it, but I think there's a strong chance that's what's happened. And if it does, and if Alex sticks with not swimming it, I don't know that it goes down at NCAAs.
They don't need points. They've got enough points.
Yeah, I do love that we don't.
But I agree with you again. You're right.
I do love that we don't know what Kate is going to swim at NCAAs. Like, it's still a mystery. I think it makes it fun because right, she could feasibly swim 2 different events and win both of them.
The fact that we're talking about that debate, again, it's amazing to me, right? Which title are you shooting for, 100 free or 200 breast, right? Like,
let's go down under for a bit. Emma McKeon announced she is not swimming at the World Championships this year in Budapest. Do you see this championships being as exciting or as non-diluted as any other World Championships? I mean, obviously Emma's a huge name, but do you think we're still going to see people like show up and break world records like we see at nearly every post-Olympic World Champs?
I'm swimming that because I think the United States is still going to be all in on the World Championships. I think most of Europe will be all in on the World Championships. We're missing swimmers for injuries and illness and various other reasons at every World Championship meet. I think Emma McKeown not being there definitely hurts them, the profile of the meet, because she was the star of the Olympics. But there's still $2.7 million in prize money on the line for swimmers for 8 days of racing, in addition to federation funding and all these other things that is what truly is supporting these swimmers and keeping these careers going. So I think that most of the swimmers you expect to be ready for World Championships will be ready for World Championships. I think a lot of these swimmers are figuring out how to go fast more than once a year as compared to before, and they won't be afraid to do that. So I am swimming that it's still going to be a big World Championship meet with lots of records and all of the other things.
I'll swim it, but with a leg cramp. How's that for a caveat? Again, it's frustrating, right? I'm a big baseball guy. You just don't see stars say, hey, we're going to skip the World Series because we need a break. But I get it for someone because it's such a totally different sport. I really do. And I think what is exciting is, even if we're missing a few of the key folks, you never know who's going to pop up and do something amazing at World Championships, right? Whether it was Reagan Smith breaking a world record a couple years ago, men's, was it 400 free at the Olympics last year?
With Ahmed Hafnou.
Yep. So someone pops up and does something amazing, and that's part of the fun of the sport. You just really never know what's going to happen on any given day. So I think it'll still be a blast. It'll be fun to see some fast swimming after it's been a really weird 2 years for everyone. You know what baseball players do? They skip the All-Star game when they're not feeling it. So I think the ISL, because in my view, the ISL is the All-Star game. It's the novelty. It's the put the best swimmers, no matter what teams they're on, together in a relay. To me, the ISL is the All-Star game, and I think the ISL will lose
that battle this summer.
So that's a great comparison. I was going to ask what is swimming's all-star game, but now we have it, right? And that's it. It's going to be so interesting to see how that plays out. Who's going to do what? I mean, we just published Caleb Dressel saying he's absolutely not doing the whole season, but he's still planning on doing part of it. I mean, he's the guy, right? So that's going to be interesting. Braden, you mentioned earlier that athletes are learning how to swim fast more than once a year, which is amazing for every swimming fan and swim nerd on planet Earth. Kaylee McKeown, who just switched teams, training under Michael Bohl now, dropped some spicy times over the weekend. 200 back faster than what she went in Tokyo to win Olympic gold. We've seen this before where an athlete, comes off a break, maybe gets a new coach, new training, and they like pop fast times all of a sudden. Do we think that she is going to be able to repeat those times, go faster at some point this summer or at some point this year, whether it's at World Champs, comms, whatever other meet Australia decides to focus on?
Yeah, I think she can be a little bit faster. I don't know. It's hard to say because it's not just that she just changed teams, but she just finished a run of sort of experimenting with different teams. So, that can interrupt training a little bit, and maybe she's not totally broken down here, but, there's no reason to believe that it at least means that whatever she's doing with Bully isn't going to kind of screw up whatever she came in with. So, I think she'll go fast this summer. I think I'm swimming that. The bigger question is, what is Regan Smith going to do this summer? What is Kylie Maas going to do this summer? I don't know if she'll be untouchably fast, and she'll have to face Regan Smith if she goes to Worlds. She'll have to face Kylie Maas if she goes to Commonwealth Games. So they've got to figure it out if she wants to be on top again. But I'm swimming ability to go fast again. It's February, right? We still have 4 months even to Worlds.
I'll swim that as well. And again, she has the experience. It's not like she's thrown down these times without ever having raced on the big stage before. I think that might be a different conversation, but she had a great summer. She knows what she's doing when it comes to the biggest stages in the world, and I don't see any reason she won't be right up there again.
Although she was slower at the Olympics than at trials last year. But this isn't trials, and these times were good for February, but she can be faster more than once.
Guess we'll see. Braden, the ominous question. Do we have any last tidbits? I know we didn't cover everything because there's so much college swimming, but any last thoughts? Robert, any parting thoughts before we sign off?
I'm just happy to have a baseball guy back on this podcast. We've missed Tori's baseball insights, and Robert, I thank you for that.
I try. Yeah, one last thing. I'll just throw this out here. I was looking at the simulator this morning for men's. NC State leads right now over Florida and Texas.
Oh, that's right.
Probably won't last, but they could make some noise at NCAAs.
Sink or swim, NC State men top 2.
Sink.
But
boo.
God, we're the worst podcasters ever. We need more hot takes.
Another year or two, we'll see.
I don't know. I think NC State could challenge Cal.
Cal looks great.
Yeah.
Cal's better than you give them credit for.
I know they're good, but NC State is good too.
So much talent at the top right now. Everyone's good, which is going to make things really interesting when it comes to prelims at NCAAs.
It'd be so awesome if we get another NCs like 2018, where it's a three team race, where ultimately we saw the top 3 be what we thought it would, but it was still close. That's the SwimSwam Breakdown. Tune in every week for your week's news in swimming.